Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Mormon Newscast. We've got a lot of news this week, not much of it good, but we're going to start with a few things that you know about and a few things that I've been trying to hunt up as far as facts regarding the LDS church that was attacked in Michigan yesterday. Also, President Nelson passed away the night before. Some are trying to see a connection between the two. We'll get to that when we get to that. But for now, good evening, Rebecca Biblioteca. Good evening, Bill Reel.
How are you?
Yeah.
Good evening to you.
Well, I'll tell you, I'll wait to do my other precatory comments from that story about the LDS church attack until it comes up. First off, I think we're going to be addressing the President Nelson returns to Heavenly Father story. Bill Reel will be covering that. Maniac attacks LDS church in Michigan. I'll be covering that one. Missing article on the family proclamation. I think that's a little Nancy Drew sleuthing by our very own Rebecca Biblioteca. Tyler Robinson in court today. A little bit about that we'll talk. It wasn't a very important hearing, but I found out something that's kind of disturbing. So the last story is LDS missionary numbers shrinking and temple updates. That's you, isn't it, Rebecca?
It is me. And you know, there is some other news this week that, you know, we will cover toward the end of the broadcast. So,
okay, really good. Well, let's go ahead and move on to the very first story of tonight with Mr. Reel.
Strangely enough, I don't think this is the biggest story. I think yours is. I threw this in at the front here. We'll get through it pretty quick. But President Russell M. Nelson, 17th president of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, passed away at the age of 101. He had just gone blind sometime recently, and it had just come out publicly within a few days of his passing. And so we thought we were going to come on tonight and maybe have a conversation around that. And then just a few days later, we find out that President Nelson has passed away, marking the end of an era for the global faith. During his tenure, he presided over a period of remarkable change. And I don't think no matter what side of the fence you're on the LDS church and on its leaders, I don't think there's any other way to say it than there was a ton of change under his leadership.
Yes, there was. And the only thing I object to is that my deck chair is hopelessly lost on the deck of the Titanic now.
Yeah, well,
I can't find it. I've tried.
Well, others will be looking for you as well. So the reshaping how members worship, how the church presents itself to the outside world, and how its sacred rituals are experienced by millions of Latter-day Saints. His passing leaves the faith at a pivotal moment as it prepares to choose a new leader. Among Nelson's most visible legacies was his insistence on abandoning the term Mormon to describe either the church or its members. He emphasized repeatedly that the full name, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, was a divine mandate, not a matter of branding. I will say there are exceptions when it's convenient for the church and works for them. They'd like you to go ahead and also leave off Latter-day Saints and just call it the Church of Christ. So it's not exactly a divine mandate when they don't want it to be. But the Church of Jesus Christ Latter-day Saints, it was a divine mandate, not a matter of branding. This rebranding effort extended to everything from official websites, social media, to the Mormon Tabernacle Choir, which became the Tabernacle Choir on Temple Square. It was a move designed to distance the faith from cultural nicknames and reinforce its Christian identity, even as critics noted the uphill battle in reshaping the global perception. On the worship front, Nelson delivered dramatic adjustments. He shortened the traditional 3-hour Sunday block of meetings to 2 hours, a shift welcomed by many families and seen as easing the weekly burden of church participation. That was a good thing. In the temple, he spearheaded sweeping revisions. Ceremonies became shorter, more streamlined, and significantly less sexist. And women's roles elevated and gendered language softened. These changes signaled a conscious effort to modernize practices that had long been criticized, both internally and externally, while preserving the sacredness of temple worship for Latter-day Saints.
Hey, Bill, I got to ask you, this couple here in the temple outfits, where did you get those?
That's the church has told us all not to use AI, but I know Rebecca uses it. I use it. I'm going to happily throw it out there. This was an AI image.
Well, I was just wondering because I've never seen anybody actually look good.
Yeah.
I'm impressed.
These guys look handsome and quite cute. So I asked
These are
AI to
simple
make
models.
AI refused to make it because it was sacrilegious.
Mm-hmm.
So it said what it could do is it could make two people in similar clothing with white aprons. And I said, go ahead and do what you said you could do, but make the aprons green. And it went ahead and did them anyway. And so I got it there. And then up above, you see the 2-hour church that everybody was thrilled about going from 3 to 2. Nelson also broadened participation in rituals. He allowed women and children to go forward and serve as witnesses for baptisms and temple ordinances, a move that gave more inclusivity to practices once tightly restricted. Standards for sacred garments were updated to reflect modern clothing fits, and missionary rules were relaxed, with dress codes becoming less rigid. You can see the tank top garments there above. You can see the sisters in the pants down below, as well as the elder with the top button undone and no tie. These adjustments reflected Nelson's push to make the faith less out of step with contemporary life, particularly for younger generations and younger women who had long sought recognition and inclusion. All right, so we get to hear, this was a moment that happened sort of recently, not only the Kirtland Temple purchase, but 40-year-old missionaries, single men. So the outward face of the church also underwent transformation under his watch. Nelson announced a staggering approximately 200 new temples, signaling an unprecedented building program meant to cement the church's global presence. Temple Square in Salt Lake City underwent a massive overhaul. Historic preservation took center stage with the purchase of the Kirtland Temple, as well as tons of other properties in Kirtland, as well as documents and other artifacts that the Community of Christ had up to that moment. Meanwhile, cultural productions such as the famed Hill Cumorah pageant were discontinued, distancing the church from some of its conflicts with Book of Mormon history. These moves, coupled with expanded opportunities for older single men to serve missions, there's one of them there, he looks thrilled, highlighted Nelson's willingness to realign the church with practical realities of a modern world. With his passing, the question of succession now turns to the church's senior leadership. By tradition, the most senior apostle, in this case, Elder Oaks, right there front left, will assume the role of church president, though he is 93 years old himself. The apostles meet in the Salt Lake Temple. They pray together, at least that's what they tell us, and formally sustain the new leader in a process that has been followed since the 19th century. Now, I've got behind him who would be next in seniority, Elder Holland, who isn't in great health himself. Ever since that Musket speech, he's gone downhill a little bit. And then we've got Elder Uchtdorf behind him, who still is the Silver Fox. And looking upon those three with a lot of resentment is Elder Bednar in the back, who just can't wait his turn. But no matter what, some things can change and some things stay the same, hence the Back to the Future logo there at the top.
I am thinking that maybe Elder Bednar will be a counselor in Elder Oaks' new first presidency, along with Eyring. He's got to keep the financial whiz kid around to get around all those, those rules they have at the Securities and Exchange Commission.
I can tell you who it won't be. It won't be the Silver Fox if Elder Oaks is president of the church.
What do you think, Rebecca?
Silver ceiling right there for him. No, it's going to be Bednar. They need to have someone younger. There's no way that they can have that gerontocracy. And someone in the comments was asking, is it just the oldest person? No, it's when you were called. And interestingly, sometimes people are called at the same time, and so there's a little competition, wiggle room there. But yeah, you have to keep track. I once wanted to invent an app called Apostle Death Watch just to kind of keep track. And now people have done it since then. But it is interesting to follow.
Rebecca, you're absolutely correct. It is a matter of seniority. It has changed over the years, but the way it's been for over a century, I believe, is the apostle who has the longest standing consecutive time as an apostle is the president of the church. It's not about choosing.
And it'll be interesting for folks to know that Elder Uchtdorf and Elder Bednar were both set apart as apostles at the same moment, same day. but Elder Uchtdorf was set apart first, and Bednar was set apart after him, and hence Uchtdorf is higher in seniority than David Bednar.
Can I ask you this question, Bill? Thanks for looking that up.
Let's see.
My understanding is that everything I said is true, but of course, then you get these places where 2 apostles are called and sustained at the same general conference, or even 3, which happened not that long ago, and they're still in the quorum of the 12. My understanding is that when multiple apostles are called at the same time, the order in which their seniority is determined is based upon their physical age. In other words, nobody makes a choice
what I
and says,
thought.
you first, you third. No, it's based upon their age, just like the seniority of the original 12 apostles in 1835, I think, was based on their age.
Yeah, I don't know that. And if you both are saying that's the case, I trust you.
Well, we should look it up so we don't spread false information. But I believe that too. Say there were 3 apostles called on the same day, then within those 3, it would be, an age hierarchy. But someone in the chat, look it up for us, please.
I did think, what would happen if Elder Oaks called Elder Uchtdorf back into the presidency? And I cannot think of anything that would be a stronger rebuke to the guy who just passed away. He would have to intend it as a rebuke to do that, to say, I can't believe you were so stupid as to let this guy go out of the first presidency. I'm putting him back first thing.
No.
So I don't think it's going to happen.
I don't think that's going to happen. Can I bring up one observation that I made in the church news statement, of course, that said we are very sorrowful to announce they called him President Nelson. They did not say prophet and president. They later talked about, prophet, but in the first, several paragraphs, it's simply president. And when I looked back at President Monson's passing, it said we are sorrowfully announcing the passing of our prophet and president. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Are we moving towards simply president, right? Sounds a little less strange.
We'll see what happens. I'll just note here, while the transition is designed to project seamless continuity, each new president brings his own priorities and vision. I wonder if Elder Oaks will bring his homophobia with him. We'll see. Nelson's successor inherits a church that has seen sweeping modernization, but also faces mounting pressures such as declining retention in some regions, skepticism over its massive wealth, and a membership negotiating between tradition and modernity. The coming months will show whether the church continues following in Nelson's reforming footsteps or strikes a different balance between innovation and preservation.
I should think that, I'm sorry, what was that, Bill?
Any other thoughts from you guys?
Yeah, I should think that one of his first acts as president of the church would be to institute a new condition of being the president of the church, which is that you have to have been born in the Americas.
Yeah.
That would be interesting. Well, and the other thing we're not talking about is that this means there's a vacancy in the Quorum of the 12, a new apostle. And whether this would happen on conference weekend, I mean, this is such strange timing, isn't it?
Yes.
Will Oaks even be named the prophet so quickly? And when will President Nelson's funeral actually take place? All these things are really important as far as what's going to happen. I did look up President Monson. Now, his funeral took place 10 days after he passed away. So there is the possibility that that funeral would be after conference, but all these things matter as far as who they're going to call and what they're going to do. But there has been a lot of speculation on who the new apostle might be. I have heard the name Corbett thrown around a lot, and that would be really interesting.
I'd be surprised.
Yeah, I don't know.
I have a hunch. I have a hunch there is still some racist doctrine at the very top of the church, that the very top 15 can't be a African or African American person of color.
Yeah, because what you're committing yourself to is the very real possibility that a black man could be the president of the church, that they could be one of the lucky few who survive everyone else.
That might be the only
problem
way
for you. Then you're going to be against having one be called as an apostle.
That might be the only way that we get an apology on that issue, is if it comes from a person of color themselves.
Exactly. But it's optically such a bad look with the basically only place membership is increasing in Africa, and there is no representation there, in the Q15. So I don't know.
We will see if that happens. I've learned, as where the LDS church is concerned, I've learned to live with disappointment.
Yeah. I'll just note, I think one of you two inserted this
I
slide.
did that. I put that in there. The reason I put that in there is because Jasmine Rapley did a video about, in homage to President Nelson called "He Changed Everything," and not quite everything, but yeah, I know what you're getting at. The reason that struck me and the reason I put it on the slide is because the president of the church when I joined in 78 was Spencer W. Kimball. And when he passed away in 85, I think the worst thing you could have said about him was that he changed everything. And now apparently it's trying to be presented as a good thing that we have a president of the church who is changing everything. It's just amazing to have lived. It's not that long. It's 40 years, really. It's not even 40. No, it is 40 years since he passed away. Okay. But 40 years, and to see the church go from believing that a prophet should not change anything to thinking that it's a great thing that he does.
We were told that the fullness of the gospel had been restored. And now what you have is a self-admittance that all of that in the past was built on a sandy foundation, because essentially every key doctrine has changed in some way. And Nelson, under his leadership, Jasmine is certainly pointing it out. I announced many of those in my commentary on this
Right.
the story, but essentially everything's changed in it, and a lot of it has happened under Nelson's leadership.
It's true.
And the umbrella is ongoing restoration. You can
Oh,
change
it is
anything you
absolutely.
want.
He's flung wide the
anything you
door.
want. Yep, because it's an ongoing restoration. And my only question is, and maybe I'll attend the funeral. I mean, they have usually you can pay your respects in Salt Lake. Will he be buried with his lighted pen? I just wonder, right there. It's possible.
One other little thing we should note is that Wendy Nelson probably disappears at this point, and we probably never see her again.
Well, it's Kristen's time to shine.
Exactly.
Yeah. Anyway, that's the end of my story. Back to you, RFM.
All right. Yeah, we'll see. I mean, this would be very difficult for a person, Wendy, who enjoys everything that she's been, living for the last 8 years or so, and pretty
18.
good at it, pretty darn
Probably.
good at it. She's been out there and in the public eye much more than any prior prophet's wife that I can remember. Rebecca, are there any others that you can think of who are as public?
No, but I think social media amped up in the last 8 years, like you said. And I feel now she can return to the life she was living before, where she was
What was that
probably
like,
pretty
Rebecca?
happy. And what was that life? Well,
Yeah.
we'll just have to let Wendy decide what that life is. But yeah, she'll be able to return to, whatever she was doing before.
It at least included weekend trips with Sherry Dew, so maybe back to those.
Yes, it did. It did.
Okay, now thank you so much, because that's just a great introduction for like the worst story in forever. All right, so this is my story now. I think everybody out there knows what's been going on in Michigan, in a little town I'd never heard of before, and whose name I may never forget as long as I live. Grand Blanc, or Grand Blanc. I'm not sure exactly how they say it, but that's the name of this little town in Michigan, where yesterday, while people were there in church, sounds like a bunch of people were there. Someone was talking about hundreds. Then there was a lady who was actually there who said 150 or so, and that sounded still big, but at least, doable for a Mormon ward. Yeah, some crazy guy runs a pickup into it and then starts shooting people and sets the church on fire. Absolutely crazy. And I start getting notifications of this in the morning. Of course, Michigan's Eastern time. I'm Pacific, so I'm 3 hours earlier. But I start getting these notifications from Rebecca and from other people about this having happened. And I think the decision was made pretty early that I'd be doing this story tonight, but I've just been following this story all day yesterday. And I am so heartbroken and soul sick over this incident. And it's like, when will this ever stop? When will we ever learn? But I stopped watching it about 8 last night, and I thought, I need just to listen to some music or something and take my mind off this, and I did. But then I went back to it, and then this morning, and so on, trying to come up with a way of presenting this to you. By the way, I had thought and talked with Rebecca and Bill yesterday about should we do a live stream on this yesterday. And I thought, if you think so, okay, but I'm not sure it accomplishes anything to do a live stream on a tragedy. What is there to say, really? And it might look like it's just kind of opportunistic. And I certainly had nothing to say in addition to what was being reported on the air. But I think we have a few things that we can report tonight on the regularly scheduled newscast. And the first part is this clip from ABC News, which basically consolidates everything into a nutshell, just in case you haven't heard of what's been going on. Then we're going to talk about a few details.
Federal and local authorities urgently investigating the mass shooting and fire that engulfed the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints Sunday in Grand Blanc, Michigan.
We have an active shooter at the church and PD's on scene saying the building is also on fire.
Investigators say 4 people were killed and at least 8 others injured.
I can confirm at this time that the FBI is now leading the investigation and is investigating this as an act of targeted violence.
Authorities say the suspect, a 40-year-old Thomas Jacob Sanford, rammed this pickup truck through the church's front doors. Then, armed with an assault rifle, opened fire at hundreds of congregants packed inside for Sunday services.
We got children inside too.
The first calls to 911 at 10:25 a.m.
Just saw a guy with a gun and he started opening fire at everybody.
Paul Kirby ran outside after hearing a loud boom.
I'm sure it'll hit me later tonight just how close I was to possibly dying. Once I got with my family, gave them a big hug, and it's just the fear of losing them was extremely difficult.
One survivor, still in his blood-stained shirt, telling our ABC affiliate WXYZ the suspect was wearing camouflage and shot at his car as he tried to flee.
He pointed his gun at our car and fired 3 shots. 2 of them went through our windshield and just missed me, and luckily everybody else.
Police say the suspect also set the building on fire, plumes of black smoke filling the sky. And investigators say they located suspected explosive devices linked to the suspect as well, teams working to safely clear the heavily damaged building.
We do believe that we will find additional victims once we have that scene secure.
The terror lasting an agonizing 8 minutes until authorities shot and killed the gunman, who officials say was a former Marine and an Iraq War veteran. A spokesperson for the LDS Church telling ABC News, places of worship are meant to be sanctuaries of peacemaking, prayer, and connection. We pray for peace and healing for all involved.
Our church is gone. I joined the church 38 years ago. To see somebody would do this to my church.
And all this comes at an already difficult time for the church. Their president, Russell Nelson, died on Saturday. He was 101 years old. The church members believe he was also a prophet. So this is an all-around tough time for this church community. George?
Alex Perez, thanks.
So there we have that. Rebecca, do you have any comments about this?
Well, like you said, we were all kind of delving into President Nelson's death and posting back and forth and talking about how we were going to cover this. And then suddenly, here's the news. And for some reason, I tend to be kind of a receptacle of news and information. So I started getting texts from people that said, hey, my sister was in that church. Here's her experience. I mean, I was just getting a barrage of firsthand information that was so overwhelming. And I just feel, I don't know, it's traumatic for all of us that are experiencing it, secondhand and watching, but one of the stories that stood out to me that I received from somebody who had a family member that was there, was about this little family, a husband, wife, and baby, and they went to the nursery and the husband put the wife and baby behind a table and he grabbed like an easel to see, that kind of drama. Sorry, it's very hard to picture that.
Okay, well, thank you. I'll continue with this part, okay? Because this is one of the things that came out in the story early on and which was repeated in this piece by ABC, which appears to be incorrect. The guy in the pickup, by the way, guy's name Thomas Jacob Sanford. Thomas Jacob Sanford pickup truck did not go through the door, front door or otherwise, of this chapel. And I'm not sure how that idea got started, except for maybe that would be what would be expected, or maybe people thought that this place here in the front of the chapel was a door when it was not a door. And you can see on the lower left picture, you can see this long rectangular shape, which is, of course, right in the front of the chapel. If you're looking up there where the speakers are and the choir seats are, right? That's that wall. It's the same in pretty much every single Mormon church I've ever been in. But this thing here, obviously not a door. But if you see the picture on the right with the truck there, you can see above it is that same concrete, and the picture, the sign, which says the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, is this white square on that rectangle. And you can see that in the left picture there, and you can match up those two lights on the side of the building. So that's where the truck went. And one of the witnesses, I must have looked at so many witnesses last night on all these different channels and today. But one of the witnesses described being in the chapel, and the bang came from the front of the chapel, and he pointed right up to where it would have been, and the wall cracked, is what he said. And then everybody ran outside to see if they could help. Okay, so that was that main thing that I just wanted to see if I could correct.
Can I just say one more thing here, which is, who knows what his plan was? But had the structure not stopped the truck, he literally would have drove right into the chapel with people on the stand and whatnot. Like, thank goodness that whatever degree of construction there are in these buildings, that it at least stopped a truck from going through the chapel wall.
And
I've
he
got to
left
tell
it
you, I have no
running,
idea
as I
what the
understand.
construction standards are on these chapels. I know they have to, get permitted, but I was kind of surprised to see this truck cause that damage in the wall. And I look at overhead pictures of the truck, and it doesn't look like there's that much damage to the truck. I imagine that a piece of wall in that position is not designed necessarily to take a force from outside like that. But anyway, it's just surprising to me. I'm sorry, Rebecca.
He left it running when they initially came outside because they thought, oh, someone has accidentally crashed into the building. And then the people that ran outside saw the truck was still running. They said they saw the flags and instantly thought, okay, I think we're in trouble, and then ran back in. But yeah, apparently the truck was still running, pressing against the buildings. So
I will say that one question that I have that I don't think I've had answered yet is how it is that a person like, first off, there's this crazy idea that police got there in 30 seconds. That's a strange thing. And it's led to people wondering, well, are these policemen, were they members of the church who were there at the meeting, like a sheriff's deputy or this, a DE, was it DNA? It was DNA. What? Department of Natural, DNR guy, Department of Natural Resources. I'm sorry. DNR, and another guy, and they opened fire. And what's not clear is some people are speculating, well, it's 30 seconds, they must have been there already. But then again, if they're there already and are taking this guy on, how does he set this fire? This is the question I have. And I'm not sure that it took him a long time to do it, but how does he get to set that fire? And whatever time it would take to do it, I guess we'll find out as the investigation continues. Do you have any ideas about that question, Rebecca?
yeah, I was going to say, I did receive, like I said, that's why I got so emotional. I just kept getting all these texts from people. I know someone here. I don't know why they're sending them to me, but so yeah, it was a little overwhelming. Sorry, everybody. But one text that I did get about this, somebody said, yeah, the second counselor is the one that shot him and took him out. And I thought, well, that's not right. I heard on the news, that it was a police officer. I never made that connection because there are, concealed carry laws in church buildings. You can't unless you're an officer, as I understand it. So I know some wards, I was in a ward where there was, a police officer, and he did carry for protection in the ward. So that makes sense what you just said, RFM, that it's possible that there were police officers as part of the congregation. So both things could be true, that a police officer took him out and it was also a member of the congregation. So that I had not thought of that until you said that. So that's very possible.
Okay. Anything that you want to say about that, Bill? All right, then let's go to this next part, because what ends up happening is that the reason, apparently, and it seems pretty sure at this point, that this guy, this maniac, this Thomas Jacob Sanford went and blew up a Mormon church, shot it up, set it on fire, is for no reason more complicated than that he hates Mormons. And for whatever reason, even in the news conference this morning that the governor was at, Gretchen Whitmer, specifically addressing questions, turning aside questions about motive. That's not important, she said. And I think a lot of people are very curious. I'm curious. Aren't you curious? So last night, I'm going through the feed, right? And I've been watching stuff, different networks, same material going through. Sometimes one network will interview a different witness than another network will. And so I'm trying to find all the information I possibly can, because I know this is going to be a tough night tonight on the newscast. And then I find this guy, it's like a small time guy. He's a local, and he says he's got the city councilman, or a guy who's running for city council in Burton, Michigan, which is the same little town that this guy was from, that this Thomas Jacob Sanford, that Sanford was from, and that he ran into him just a few days ago when this guy, his name's Chris Johns, who's the guy running for city council, he's out canvassing the elections in November. He's out glad handing and talking to people, trying to get votes. He says he ran into this guy, and he knew it was this guy when he saw the picture. And he talks about what it was that this guy told him in their conversation. And I knew as soon as I saw the description, which wasn't quite that detailed, right? But that this guy had a contact with him a few days ago and talked with him. I thought, this is something I want to listen to. And I did. And I was glad, because it's very important. This guy's channel had 2,000 views or something last night. And by this afternoon, it was 124,000. And rightfully so. All right. So if you'll play this is one part of the interview. We'll play the other part of the interview in a second.
Hello, everyone. I'm talking to Chris right now, and you contacted me a short time ago, pretty distraught, because actually earlier today, you came to the realization that you say that you talked to the person who did this horrible thing in Grambling Township.
I did last week. It was Wednesday or Thursday. I'm running for city council and I'm canvassing, and I had an address on my map that I went to, and I came across a gentleman. He was very friendly, and he had interacted positively with me. And then we got out of the vehicle. We started just to talk. And after a short while, the conversation went to the Church of Latter-day Saints, Mormonism. And he just made the position multiple times that Mormons are the Antichrist. And he, in not so many terms, said that several times. He gave me his background, but I just walked away from a person who had some very sharp views about Mormons.
Yeah. So you were just out campaigning.
Okay. So there's the first time he talks about it. That's his brief version, the short version. He'll give some more detail here in the later clip, and I wanted to include that as well. But it seems very, very clear that this guy, he really is running for, and he really did double check the address, and he really did recognize this guy. And he says he was out talking to him, nice guy, but all of a sudden everything changes. And now he's talking about how much he hates Mormons and saying that the Mormons are the Antichrist. Repeatedly, he's saying it. He's fixated. He's perseverating on this idea. And so I think this obviously cannot be ignored when it comes to figuring out a motive for why it is that he drove into a Mormon church and shot it up and set it on fire within a week of this conversation. Then this morning, I got up, I'm checking news feeds, and I find that on Fox News, Fox and Friends, they have the White House spokesperson, I think that's what it is, Caroline Levitt, and she's on Fox and Friends, and she says the same thing. She says the FBI believes that this is because this guy hated Mormons.
You know, Caroline, we had the assassination of Charlie Kirk. We had the attempted assassination on ICE officers in my hometown of Dallas. And you just obviously just referred to the church. Did this suspect leave any indication that he was trying to target people of faith? More than the obvious of him doing it to a church on a Sunday.
Well, from what I understand, based on my conversations with the FBI director, all they know right now is this was an individual who hated people of the Mormon faith. And they are trying to understand more about this, how premeditated it was, how much planning went into it, whether he left a note. All of those questions have yet to be answered, but certainly will be answered by.
He hated people of the Mormon faith, is what the FBI believes, according to the director. So that seems to match up. Of course, there's a possibility that there's only one reason the FBI thinks that, and that's because they talked to the city councilman or saw the podcast as well. I'm guessing they might have more than that in addition to that. All right. Any thoughts about that part from either of you?
Well, I was going to say, some people thought, okay, maybe he just wanted to do this to a church, right? Just a random church.
Right.
So I kind of did some digging around Google Maps, and I discovered that the church where this attack happened, it was actually the church. It was in his ward boundary if he had been a Mormon. So it is the church that people in that town would attend if they were LDS. There were, I found at least 15, if not more, other Christian churches around him. So to me, that says targeting a specific place and time. Here's the other thing to note, and our friend Martine brought this up. He knew what time the service was, right? He got there right when it started. They were just doing the sacrament. He knew possibly something about the layout of the building. If, he knew they'd all be in the chapel and wanted to run the truck there. We don't know that for sure, but to me, it definitely says some kind of direct target to an LDS church. So, and then of course, I think you're going to play the clip where he may have lived in Utah and had a bad experience perhaps with some Mormons. So
yes, it sounds like some experience. And that's why I want to play that second part. By the way, this is part of my life, everybody, just so you know. It's a wonderful part of my life to be up at all hours last night, texting with Rebecca Biblioteca, who with her fanciest Nancy Drew hat on, is sending me screenshots of all the other churches in Burton that this guy could have gone to that were closer to where he lived if all he wanted to do was attack a random Christian church to make a random Christian point. But no, he had to travel to this place. And you also found out this was the nearest Mormon church, LDS church, to where he lived.
yeah, it was within his ward boundaries of his address. This is where, if he would attend it, and that's why I thought, does he have a family member attending there? A lot of people thought that, some connection to the building, but of course we don't know anything about that.
Yeah. So we're going to play this clip that has the longer version of the city councilman, the guy's running for city council, his story of his conversation with this guy. And listen closely. We're playing it at normal speed, but this guy will clip through the facts like anything. He's got several important facts that he just sort of goes bing, bing, bing with.
Person who, again, he had very sharp views. And when we first started speaking, very positive, we just made just general chit chat. And then he went into his background, how he was a Marine, he had served overseas. And again, I'm going to paraphrase because I'm just going from memory, but he, to start new, had moved out to Utah to plow snow. He then began a relationship with a woman who was in the LDS church. And then the conversation changed to tattoos, which he had a lot of, and how he had to have all his tattoos removed in order to be, in for certain religious ceremonies. And it was just a piece where I was very careful how I answered, because it's one of those things where I did not know what response was going to be acceptable to him. And so it was a case of like, I just wanted to get off the door and away from him.
So you just wanted to be nice and say, okay, have a nice day.
Exactly. And just try to do it the easiest way possible while kind of just walking, one step at a time. And again, when I first started, my daughter was with me. She was in the car because we're, driving from house to house. He was very nice. I mean, he was extremely nice. My daughter has special needs. She reached out to him. He held her hand. He was he talked about his child who had a serious medical concern and how just the care there.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, the conversation shifted from chit chat into what are your thoughts about the Church of, the Church of Latter-day Saints? And again, my cousin played football at BYU. I have friends who, so I have a history with BYU in the Mormon Church. You don't know what you're going to say that could potentially cause a reaction. So I kept my views to myself and walked away.
So
I've watched this a number of times, and I'm convinced that what he is saying is that this guy Sanford is getting so exercised about Mormons that the city council guy doesn't want to even mention anything about Mormonism or his cousin who played football at BYU or anything, because he doesn't want to set him off and get hurt. So he's basically just not saying any of that, putting his eyes down and slowly backing away from this guy because he's dangerous. I don't know how I don't know if I've ever seen anybody express what it feels like to feel that kind of danger without saying I felt like I was in danger. What do you think, Bill?
It seemed like in his head he wanted to disagree on some level and just felt it was an enormous amount of risk, as you're pointing to. Yeah. Who know, again, even if we put together whatever pieces are observable in the outside world about why this guy did what he did, we'll never know what was going on inside his head and what connections he made and why things happened the way they did. And I think all of us are trying to figure out, both with the Charlie Kirk thing, with that assassination, and then with this event, what is it that leads someone to not just having extreme ideas, which there are lots of people out in the world that have extreme ideas, but then taking those ideas to the next level and carrying out some sort of major violence on someone or on a community?
I don't know, but the more it happens, I think the more it's going to happen. Rebecca, did you have something you wanted to say? Because he does mention a number of things that were said. The tattoos, did you want to talk about those? Yeah.
I'm pulling an RFM. There are a lot of bullet points, that are there in that. And one of the main things I think is that, he did drive a snowplow in Park City, apparently, snow removal, and had a relationship with someone who was in the LDS church. Now, it's interesting what the gentleman who was canvassing said, that the Sanford had said, I had to remove my tattoos, or they told me I had to do this before a ceremony. So what could that mean? The girlfriend wants him to get baptized or something. The girlfriend, maybe he is baptized and the girlfriend wants to go through the temple. There's all kinds of things we don't know. Obviously, you don't have to remove your tattoos to do any of those things in the church. However, this was back in 2008, I think, where there were more negative thoughts about tattoos, before it was removed from different, honor code and stuff like that. So it sounds like maybe that was something that was triggering, or the relationship was triggering, and not a positive, perhaps, view of Mormonism from all those years ago. How we got from there to where we are this week, like you said, that doesn't typically happen. But there are other factors too. I know people have gone through and put together kind of a biography of him, and he definitely appeared to be a Christian, an evangelical Christian, going to Christian theme parks on vacation, things like that. And as someone brought up in the chat, sometimes an evangelical Christian does not consider a member of the LDS church to be a Christian. And so there are some things circling around about that maybe it hence we get to the word antichrist.
Well,
right?
That's much worse than not being a Christian, being an antichrist.
To be an there's some pretty strong rhetoric in some of those circles. I'm trying to be delicate. And there were some other things that were posted from people that were there saying that he was actually asking people to declare Jesus or Joseph, things like that. If those are true, the things that people who were in the building were posting, it could be a motivation of just, a religious hate crime.
Rebecca, I'm going to ask you to repeat what you just said, just to make sure it's really clear when you talked about Jacob or Joseph.
Yeah. And again, this was a post from a person in the building. So is this true? Is this accurate? I don't know. But they said that at one point, the shooter was asking someone to declare Joseph or Jesus. Who do you believe? That kind of thing. Declare now. And when the person was not able to declare, an elderly person, then the person was shot. I mean, if this post is true, that is absolutely horrific. But that kind of asking you to declare the idea that perhaps some factions of evangelical Christianity don't think, because of Joseph Smith and because of all that, that Mormons are actually Christian. You know, they worship Joseph instead of Jesus. So I don't know. Those are just things that are kind of circling around this situation as a motivation.
Okay. Well, thank you for sharing that with us. Bill, do you have anything you want to say about that? I would add, if I haven't already said it, that calling anybody an antichrist is usually something that's done by an evangelical Christian or a Christian of some sort, mainly because if you're not a Christian, it doesn't really mean anything. I don't think. All right. So let's see what else we have up here. We had the rest of, and there's even a question from that recollection of the conversation. I mean, did he become a member? Apparently he has lots of tattoos now. This is back in 2008. Did he become a member? Did he get rid of his tattoos? Is he on the rolls of the church? I have no idea. Maybe people have looked. But regardless, something happened. It was of a personal nature, it sounds like. It wasn't like he was, I don't know, reading Kingdom of the Cults by Walter Martin or Mormonism, Shadow or Reality or something. This sounds like there's something personal that happened to him, and he's been sitting on this for a long time, and it's been boiling. Okay. Now, this was another interview. This was another one that I found, I think this morning. And this is just a clip. It's about 1 minute and 40 seconds. There's bad audio in 2 places in this clip. I heard it on my phone and then I heard it on my computer. It's in the system. It's not our fault. But you can make out the words. They just sort of kind of get a little bit, whatever you call it. You'll see what I'm talking about. This is this clip about this person who was a friend of his and says that he was super nice, but boy, there were groups of people. She doesn't say what the groups were. There were groups of people that he talked about in a way that was not acceptable.
Shock and sadness from longtime family friends of suspected Grand Blanc LDS mass shooter Thomas Jacob Sanford, who went by Jake, but not utter surprise.
If you asked me, out of everybody I know, to pick 10 people you think might do something a little like this, I wouldn't not pick him. And I hate saying that.
Kara Pattison shared these photos of Jake, who she described as a fun-loving family guy, but also a guy that harbored unkind feelings towards certain groups.
He definitely talked about groups of people in ways that weren't acceptable.
And Kara says she and her daughter had a scary and bizarre encounter with him 48 hours before the mass shooting in his truck as they were walking. This is a photo from right after that incident.
We started to cross and the truck gunned its engine and came at us. And I blocked my daughter, saved you. And we jumped back and then the window rolled down and it was Jake and he was laughing. He's like, "Oh, got you guys," And
was that normal behavior for him?
I mean, he'd never pretended to run us over before, so no, that wasn't normal behavior.
Kara's 16-year-old daughter Lydia used to babysit for Jake's son Brantley, and is completely shattered by the news of his suspected involvement in this mass shooting.
I was devastated. I didn't think someone that I knew and loved would do this to people.
Yeah, it's horrible. It's horrible.
It's devastating. It's so bad.
So the main point of that news clip was about, once again, nice guy, but there were certain groups of people. She didn't say the M word, but I'm suspecting it was there in light of everything else we've heard, that Mormons were the group or among the groups that he had nothing good to say about.
Well, and if I can bring up one other thing, when we first heard about this, I think several of us that were talking thought, I wonder if there's some connection specifically to that ward, to people in that ward. Is there something that he's angry about on a more personal level? And there was some thought and, some things that were coming out. Again, everything is kind of speculative. Could there be, aid being given to his wife to leave? I have heard this, right? Again, now I'm just like, spreading these rumors, but I've heard this on other podcasts too. Could it be something where he was not happy with something that was happening with the church and aid or lack of aid? Could it be something like that where it's very, very personal? So again, this is being talked about, and I'm sure we'll get more details as it goes on, but it could be something very personal that then leads you to target an entire group.
Yeah. Okay. Well, speaking of entire groups, it appears that, when I was a kid, when I was a missionary, it's the 80s, I'm an apologist, nothing would make me madder than people who would think I was a Jehovah's Witness. I mean, what kind of insult is that? No, I'm a Mormon. I'm not a Jehovah's Witness. And I'm sure they thought the same thing. Well, I would have thought that somewhere since then and now, today, that people would have figured out the difference between the Mormons and the J-Dubs, but apparently they have not. And apparently some of those people are even in the news. So here is from 10 News. I'm not sure where that is, but this is off the internet, off my feed, where it says Michigan shooting, church gunman identified. On the right is a picture of the gunman Sanford. On the left is a picture of a sign that says Kingdom Hall of Jehovah's Witnesses. I mean, it's got the whole thing right there. Nothing about Mormons. But I'll bet some of the reporters think, well, wait a second. They don't like to be called Mormons because that's not the full name of their church. I bet this is the full name of their church. And it's not just this local station. It's even, this is CNN. Not kidding. From CNN's Zoe Sadi, who's going to be having a lot to live down in future days. Says, what is the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints? It's even in a title that says, what is the church? And underneath it, they've got the same damn sign, the Kingdom Hall of Jehovah's Witnesses. And then underneath that, it says, the front sign of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints on Sunday.
Well, and this building is right next door to the LDS church. It's right there. And so I can see how the one thing I did learn from this is that no one, no matter how they report it, no police officer, no FBI agent, no newscaster can say the full name of the church correctly. Yeah. Everybody stutters over it. Everybody leaves out words and then finally just says Mormon. So I can see, in all the chaos that they're trying to do a story here, but yeah, it is kind of humorous, but I think it's because it's right next door.
Yes. Well, it's dangerous because if you say the entire name of the church correctly, Bloody Mary appears in the mirror.
Oh.
So there's that part. Now, Rebecca had sent this to me. And so this is apparently a faithful Mormon trying to make sense of all of these deaths, including that of President Nelson. Did you want to read that, Rebecca?
Yeah, I, of course, always go on Faithful social media to see what everybody's doing. And speaking in the name of the church, a lot of people were upset that newscasters can't get it right. That was something a lot of people were talking about. But here was a post from someone who said, and like you said, many eventful things happening just within a 48-hour period. So people's minds are reeling. They're trying to make sense of it. So this person says, one more thought before I try to get some sleep, right? The timing of the shooting at the church in Michigan, the morning after the death of President Nelson, seems to me not to be a coincidence. It's not that I think the killer planned it that way, but that President Nelson was called home so that he could greet those faithful saints on the other side of this terrible tragedy.
Which makes perfect sense to me. So basically what I'm taking from this is God can't necessarily save anybody, but he can strategically arrange the order of their deaths.
Yeah, I think it's just something inherent in Mormonism. We all, I think, did this where you look for a deeper, higher meaning. On the other side of it, you get really frustrated by that, I think, because a tragedy is just a tragedy sometimes, and there is no deeper meaning. But yeah, I think this is kind of baked in.
Yes. And now I introduce to you Dr. Richard Wadsworth, apparently a psychiatrist, I believe in Idaho, with a TikTok channel. And what he did today was he went on his TikTok. Actually, I think it was yesterday. I think it was later on Sunday. He went on his TikTok channel and did a TikTok in which he blamed post-Mormon podcasters for the carnage in Michigan yesterday. And I was astounded. I took it and I put it on my Facebook page, which I understand gets reflected on the TikTok channel, that it's been reposted. But not long after I did that, and people were weighing in on what they thought about his conclusions, he took it down from TikTok. So that's the bad news, is that he took it down from TikTok. The good news is that I saved it before he took it down from TikTok. So this is, if you click on that address, Bill, that will take you to where his video used to be. See, currently unavailable, but I think we have. Do we have it, Bill? I'm sorry. You go ahead. You do it. Hands off steering. Okay. This is it. Okay. This is like a 3.5-minute video of this guy, Richard Wadsworth, giving us his conclusion that it's because of post-Mormon podcasters that this horrible thing happened yesterday.
This morning, just a little bit ago, members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints gathered together, got their children dressed, went to church, and during the meeting, someone drove their vehicle into the side of the building, came out with a weapon, unaliving a number of people, and then set fire to the building. I want to take a minute to mourn with those families. What a horribly difficult, traumatic thing. Our only consolation is the gospel of Jesus Christ, our knowledge of being with the Savior in the afterlife. As members of the church, this is not the first time this sort of thing has happened. It will not be the last time. With what is happening on social media, with just horrific, continual, perpetual mischaracterizations, misrepresentations by anti-Mormons who are purposefully trying to demonstrate the church to be misrepresented and presented in terrible ways. There are people making content, and this content has millions and millions and millions of views that absolutely demonizes and misrepresents what the church teaches, what it's about, mischaracterizing the members and the doctrines. And it is getting worse, and it is picking up. And based on the videos that I've seen by these anti-Mormons, the way that they're portraying our beliefs and our practices, I am not in the least bit surprised of anything like this happening and more of it happening in the future. If I believed even a tenth of what is being portrayed in these anti-Mormon videos, I would not let my family associate with members of the church. And you can very easily see how someone could justify this sort of thing based on what a lot of these creators are posting online, which so horribly misrepresents and mischaracterizes our teachings and practice and the way that we live our life. The way that they worded this in the article in the Wall Street Journal, it says Exmo influencers mount a war against the Mormon church. And it starts with information. And this is where this sort of thing leads naturally. If you are an anti-Mormon or an ex-Mormon and you hate the church for one reason or another, I think that's totally fine for you to share your story, your experience, but please give context, accurate information. Please don't misrepresent and mischaracterize the church. As someone who grew up outside of Utah, this sort of thing's been, this sort of thing has been going on for a long time. And it has been amplified a millionfold with social media. And the impacts are real and they are terrible. And it really does impact people's lives really negatively. If you've posted material that you knowingly misrepresented, mischaracterized the church for not being what it actually teaches and stands up for, please correct whatever you've said. Please try to portray us accurately, and hopefully no more of this sort of thing will happen. This morning, just a little bit ago.
So I noticed that when I recorded that on my phone this afternoon, it says 23 hours ago that he put his up. So he put his up yesterday afternoon, just hours after this had happened. And I'm very interested in hearing your thoughts about that. So he is blaming post-Mormon podcasters for misrepresenting the church so egregiously as to cause people to set fire to chapels.
I'll just add in here. He said, side tangent. First off, none of us have ever condoned violence. When I look at this space of post-Mormonism, and then I look at inside the Mormon space, and again, I can go through it: Danites, Blood Atonement, Mountain Meadows Massacre, excommunication, some of the other rhetoric of Brigham Young, Desnat, Whistling Whittlers. You go on and on and on, right? When I look at the post-Mormon space, I think one guy suggested a joke of sneaking into a temple and recording a porn video in a temple. There have been people out there who have set a ward building on fire. We've reported on that, condemned it. We've never said anything that could be construed as supporting that sort of violence. I said this to you guys. I'll say it here. It surprises me. Definitely don't want it happening, but it surprises me that with all of the trauma, all of the things that Mormonism has done to harm important relationships to people, because someone is deconstructing and leaving the church and someone else is in, and that person who's in has been taught by their church to choose the person or choose the church over the relationship. I'm surprised there isn't more violence. I think it says something about people on this side. So I said that, I'll say that first, that I'm actually, I think the people on this side of things manage their feelings and anger pretty damn well, considering what's happened to them. And then the second thing I'll say is a little side note. He said, if you would believe 10% of the things that those post-Mormon content, those ex-Mormon, anti-Mormon content creators create, he wouldn't let his family go to church. I've got a little secret for you, my friend. More than 10% of what you've been told is true. You might want to read a little more.
He's got to be hoping for at least 91% being false there.
Yeah, there's got to be at least 50% of what people are saying on the outside is true. And at least in my side of the woods, it's a lot more than that.
Rebecca.
Yeah. Yes. No, I knew this was coming as soon as it was coming out that, it was sort of a Mormon hate crime. I'm like, okay, here we go. I first have to say that this gentleman is a psychiatrist. Am I correct? Or he's
Can you
somebody with
imagine?
mental health.
That's what it says on his page.
Yeah. No. Okay. So that's the first thing that he goes to, not PTSD, not trauma from, being a veteran. He first goes to, oh, you must have been watching some podcasts. I can't believe that you wouldn't think that mental health would be one of the first things that you would look at for an incident like this. So I do have to share that I put out a short detailing the story of the young family trapped in the nursery with the dad with the easel, trying to protect his family. And on that short, that's all I did. I put out a text from someone who knew someone that was there. Someone wrote back to me or put in the comments, have you ever considered that the anti-Mormon rhetoric you publicly spread may contribute to violence against Latter-day Saints? Have I ever considered that? Then on top of that, a family member circled that and sent it back to me, right? To say, So yeah, I know.
Wait a second. A family member circled that comment that said to you, have you ever considered that your anti-Mormon rhetoric might be leading to violence like this? And you had that's bad enough. A family member circled it and then sent it to you. That's how you saw it.
Yes, that's how I saw it for the first time. Yeah. And that's okay. You know what? You can have your opinion, but what I wrote back to the family member is, you know what? I feel like I do some good. Just in the last week, a friend and her bishop husband stepped away from the church and contacted me and said, you're a lifesaver, you and the others that put things out. I know I'm not crazy. I said a friend reached out who I haven't talked to for 6 years out of the blue. At first, I thought she was going to blast me for what I do, but she said, I discovered you and others like you, and I'm not alone. So I'm sorry, you guys all judge whether or not we are inciting violence or if we're sending a lifeline to people who find their way out of Mormonism because it's not working for them.
Wow. Well said. Thank you very much. You know, I don't usually believe in violence, but in the case of your family member, I think I'd be willing to make an exception.
Yeah,
Bill, I just need your permission is all, Rebecca.
Okay, gotcha. You're looking for Rebecca's permission or mine? I'm probably not.
No, I
gonna-
just wanted to call on you for if you wanted to add anything to this discussion.
We're in this space where we criticize the LDS church's leaders, and really, it all starts and ends with the leaders. And we criticize the leaders for their dishonesty and lying, for their issues with their ethics and morality, for setting up safe spaces for abuse, for hiding history. I still think of myself in ways as a Mormon. I spent over 2 decades in Mormonism trying to be the best Mormon I could be. I have an affinity for the people. Lots of my friends back in Ohio were members of the church, and we spent tons of time together. I want nothing but the best for the members of the church. And criticizing the leadership of the church and pointing out its deceptiveness and harmfulness throughout its history up to the modern moment is in no way a condoning of violence, and is in no way could be construed as supportive of anyone doing anything that would harm another individual or someone's property. And this, you have to be allowed to speak your mind and put your 2 cents out and be able to criticize things that you think are worthy of criticism. And I think it's such a strange thing for him to point to anti-Mormons when the news is not even named what it is, and certainly hasn't named that with what little bit has come out so far.
Yeah. The other thing I want to say to our psychiatrist friend is that we tell the truth about the Mormons at the newscast, the Mormon Newscast over there at Mormonish. You give it your best shot. I know, Rebecca. Also here on Mormon Discussions, and even Friday night, for crying out loud. When we're doing Mormonism After Dark and on Radio Free Mormon, this is where you get the truth about Mormonism. It sure as hell is not from the Mormon church. That's the last thing they want to tell you. And we don't expect you to take our word for it. We bring the receipts, we bring the evidence to show why it is that we're saying the things that we're saying. And 9 times out of 10, those come from church sources. Right, Bill? So it's not even a question about where you're going to hear the truth about Mormonism. It's at Mormon Discussions, Inc., and also over there at Mormon-ish. That's where you're going to find the truth, not from the church, and apparently not from the psychiatrist either. Okay, so that's the end of that story. Now there's a blurb about another big story, but it's just a small blurb. It's Rebecca's story, and then I did a couple slides as well. Let's put those up here on the screen. It's about Tyler Robinson, the guy charged with assassinating Charlie Kirk, who appeared in court again this morning. Rebecca.
Yeah, and you can go ahead and take this. We kind of collaborated on it, and I just threw the slide together, but I think you can just probably go through more of the details quickly than as opposed to me just reading through it. So you just go ahead and explain what happened today with Tyler Robinson appearing in court.
I will do it as quickly as I can. It was a brief hearing. He was not there in person. He was there on video, so the judge could see him. There's a slew of attorneys from the prosecutor's office, a slew of attorneys for defense attorneys. And I was watching this, and this judge, who I've never seen before or heard of before, he makes the weirdest speech. It sounded odd. It's like, who is this guy? And how long has he been a judge? And then I realized that when he was talking at the beginning of his little speech, which I hadn't caught the first time, he said that he took the oath to be a judge 56 days ago. 56 days ago, this guy became a judge. And I looked up his history, which I'll show you a little bit of. I don't think he's ever been a judge before. I think he's worked in prosecutors' offices and occasionally was a pro tem judge. That means when they need somebody else to substitute in. Okay. I mean, I did that. It's a very common thing to do. It doesn't mean that you're all ready to be a judge. And it certainly doesn't mean you're ready to be the judge on the most sensational, controversial, whatever adjective you want to use, case in the decade, if not the century so far, that this guy's going to be the judge. So the thing about it is, as I was talking to other people, it is a state case. This is Utah. And so it may well be that they've got 4 judges, and they just have cases that come in and they assign them, just whatever name comes up, and his name came up, so we got to sign this. But if that's what happened, there has got to be a way to make it so that doesn't happen. Because from my point of view, this makes no sense. It borders on the insane to have a guy who hasn't been a judge for even 2 months be sitting on the case where this guy's charged with the assassination of Charlie Kirk. So that's what they're doing in Utah, apparently. Salt Lake Tribune, I looked it up. The article that came out today. 4th District Judge Tony Graff, with 1 F, took the bench for the first time in his new role less than 2 months ago. That's the first sentence in their article. Now he's overseeing one of the most high-profile criminal cases in the country. Oh, my Lord. Recipe for disaster. And here he is. And I think I had a bit of a clip. Yeah, I have a clip where he actually says at the beginning of his little speech.
Justice demands that both of these principles, the rights of the accused and the rights of victims, be honored without compromise. I remain steadfast in my oath that I made 56 days ago to support and defend the constitutions of the United States and of Utah. I will carry out my duties with fidelity, transparency, and impartiality, treating every person who appears before me with the dignity and respect they are inherently due because they are human beings.
And he goes on and on with this, what I consider to be an ill-considered, ill-conceived, and badly delivered speech on the part of a judge, which is a total rookie error on his part. I'm glad he's committed to giving, what is it called? Fidelity and impartiality. I think both of those things are good. I'm not sure about the fidelity unless it's to the law, the impartiality to the persons, but I don't know what the heck he's talking about transparency. It is not a judge's job to be transparent. I mean, it's like it's a word that people like to hear. In fact, his job is going to be keeping a lot of things not transparent and keeping them from the jury and granting motions to suppress, unless he's telling us right now that he's not going to be granting any motions to suppress, regardless of what the law might be. So don't bother bringing them. Anyway, I was not impressed with this judge, and I think that this is not a good thing. Your thoughts, Rebecca?
Yeah, I of course raised my kids in Utah County. I know all about Utah County. This is very interesting. The conspiracy theorists are going to have a field day with this. The idea that this greeny judge is there, and especially when, like you said, the world is watching. Is he perhaps trying to be the next Judge Ito? If you're as old as I am, you know the O.J. Simpson judge. Is he trying to be a judge that every camera is going to be drinking in every word he says? I don't know, but
Ito was a disaster. He was
Yeah,
a disaster. You know what OJ said to Judge Ito after the case was over and after the jury had come back not guilty? He said, "Hey, Judge, can I get my glove back?"
Oh,
True story.
yeah. The only thing I can think is maybe there really is no mechanism when the name is drawn to cut line for somebody else. I don't know, but it's going to be interesting to watch.
Look, if there's no, these are the judges. They get to make the rules, okay, by which they determine what judges are assigned to which cases. They can change them, okay? They can modify them. This it cries out for a different judge. Bill?
I don't know enough to speak up other than I respect your opinion a ton. And it does seem a strange thing to give a sermon before you take on a case.
Yes. And he went on and on. And then he talks to the attorneys like, I encourage you to give, like 100% of yourselves and really represent this guy the best of your ability. How insulting. How condescending. As an attorney, you're like, okay, Judge, I wasn't going to do my best job, but now that you have, encouraged me to, I guess I will. what he's saying to them is, you know, you need encouragement to do your best job. It was very, very bad all
I
the
feel
way
like
around.
you're triggered. You seem like you're triggered because you called me about this today and we
Well, I've
talked for
got
a
judge
long
stories,
time.
believe me.
Oh, yeah.
I've
No,
got
I'm
judge
sure.
stories, Bacardi is how we would say it in Japan, and that means a ton of them. Every attorney does, okay?
I bet.
So,
Well, and the
and
other part of the story,
this guy looks like he's gonna accumulate a lot of judge stories in his career.
right. And the other part, and maybe you can explain this, his defense attorney said, you know, we need some more time to get this all together to even go to the next hearing, which is to decide if there's enough evidence to even proceed, right? It's kind of like
Mhm.
the pre. So more time, he doesn't appear again in court until October 30th.
Right, that
So
was when it was
it's
continued to.
really, yeah, kind of dragging out. So we'll see what
Well,
happens.
look, this is not unusual, okay? It's a big case. There's a whole lot of witnesses, which means there's gonna be a whole lot of discovery and a whole lot of cameras and all this other stuff. And what he's trying to say is, can we get this coming from the prosecutor as quickly as possible so that we can go through it and try and keep up with it as much as we can instead of waiting till October 29th and dumping it all on our front doorstep? That's what I understood him to be saying. Okay. Well, and that's all from that story. This is where I looked up his page. Talks about his prior jobs. That's how I found out that he's been a prosecutor and not a judge before. And he was appointed in May of 2025. So he had to go to judge school, which is where all the new judges go. And then he goes in there and he comes out and bing, I'm a judge. And here's the Tyler Robinson case. Judge. Next.
All right. I think this is me now. So I do want to say that a couple people in the chat mentioned, and I looked up quickly, that the funeral has been set for President Nelson. The public viewing is going to be on Monday, the 6th, and the funeral will be on Tuesday, the 7th. So thank you guys in the chat for looking that up for us.
That
So
makes
that's
sense.
interesting. That's after conference. So I don't know. What does that mean to you guys? That's kind of different, I guess. We didn't know if it'd be before or after. I don't know what it
I
means.
think it had to be after.
Yeah.
Because there is not just, you know, I mean, there's not just conference going on starting Saturday morning. There are leadership meetings
Right.
that they're having with all the 70 who've been called in from all across the world and everything. Then that's going on this week. So I think this week would have been impossible.
Yeah. So yeah, that little transition. It's interesting. We were talking before the broadcast, you know, I'm guessing they probably have a taped, you know, speech from President Nelson like they always do at conference. Will they play that posthumously? There's all kinds of questions that we don't know. So conference will be
And I want to
interesting.
ask you a question. If you had a chance to make a slide about that thing you were talking to us about right before the show started, Rebecca, which had to do with what's going to be talked about by
You know what?
Mormons.
I should bring that up, huh? Because we
It's a
are
good
talking
time.
about social media. So yeah, I came across right before the show. The best things like come out right before, and we don't have time to put them in. But somebody said that in the stake presidency in this particular area had sent out something from church leadership. So like from the top, trickling down
Can you
to
say what
state
area?
supports. It does not say what area. Yeah. And it has to do with counsel from the church on the use of official church social media channels. Facebook, Instagram, you know, Ward, Facebook, that kind of stuff. They're trying to kind of craft what kind of posts are put up, you know, right now at this particular time. So they say the church has asked that a moratorium be in effect until Tuesday night on all church channels for anything other than sharing wonderful things about the prophet. This is out of respect for those who have lost loved ones in Michigan. The church has asked that anything put up that you've put up about Michigan be taken down, and you only say wonderful things about the prophet. And now this makes sense. Tuesday evening, funeral is over, right? That does tie together. The other thing that was interesting, I saw, oh my goodness, a meme right after President Nelson died, and it was, of course, from Game of Thrones, and it said, "Brace yourself for the memes of President Nelson meeting Jesus," right? And sure enough, that happened. So you guys have probably already seen that. He's kind of holding hands with Jesus in the celestial halls of heaven.
It's
So
actually the
also,
patriarchal grip. That's the surprising thing.
you know, it could be, yes. So also instruction, apparently from church leadership, there is a photo going around of an AI generated image of President Nelson meeting the Savior. We are not to use AI created images of the Savior, I guess, or President Nelson, on church-sponsored social media. Please, in capitals, please do not use that image or others like it. Celebrate the real man, his incredible life. Any unit using this new image should replace it with one from the church newsroom immediately. So this is instructions having to do with how you would craft your official social media, like a ward Facebook page, a stake page, Instagram, stuff like that. So
I'm not sure
interesting,
a
huh?
photograph is any more the real man than an AI image, but regardless, yeah, I wanted to make sure that you had said that. By
Yeah.
the way, if I'm in charge of General Conference, what I do is I take those 3 eyewitnesses who were there in the chapel and I fly them out and I have them talk in General Conference.
Oh dear.
It would be spectacular. People would actually listen to what was being said, and with interest on top of that, they would listen. But what I expect is going to happen is that it's going to be heavy on the adulation of the prophet that was, and now the prophet that is. The prophet is dead. Long live the prophet. And my guess is there will not be a mention by name, no specific reference to what happened in Michigan. I would like to be wrong, but I think that's what's going to happen. This tends to be the way the church operates.
Yeah, they're notorious for not mentioning the biggest things in the world, right? COVID and other things. People tune into conference waiting for something, to help them hang on. And there's nothing. It's just kind of status quo. So I also share your prediction that they won't mention it at all. What do you think, Bill?
You guys are right. In the past, they have not. You had the recent incident with the bus accident where they didn't send anybody there to do anything. The church tends to keep out of General Conference the specifics of things that they feel detract from General Conference. And so we shall see.
Reality.
Yeah.
We shall
It's
see.
very unreal. It's not tethered to what happens outside. It's like a big bubble, I think, is sort of what General Conference is like. By the way, I wanted to let everybody know that we were going to do the first 2 stories. Obviously, President Nelson dies in the Michigan LDS church attack. Rebecca had a bunch of these smaller stories that she has been hanging on to actually for a week, a number of weeks in some cases. And she was the one, as we were talking about the show yesterday, she was the one saying, I think maybe we shouldn't do this because this is too lighthearted for the show. And I said, Rebecca, this week I'm in charge and I'm going to insist that you do these, but because I can't stand this anymore.
Yeah.
I need these lighthearted stories. And so I hope that I'm speaking not just for myself, but at least for some members of the audience. The main reason I want to say this is because if any of you are upset by this, please understand why, and please understand that it was my decision and not Rebecca's.
Yeah, just covering other news, I think, was the question. And I did put my very lighthearted stories away for next week. But yeah, there is other news going on. And you're right. Maybe we do need to talk about other things because it's a lot. I think we're all feeling it. So I did learn just one more thing about Michigan, that 2 general authorities, according to someone whose family member was hurt, and I got a post from them, are going to be visiting the area. 2 general authorities. That's interesting, I think. I mean, I don't know at what case you would send an apostle somewhere, but 2 general authorities will be meeting with some of the victims, according to this one family. So we'll see.
Well, that's more than Africa got.
I was going to go there, but then I wasn't. But yes, you're absolutely right. That is a lot more than the
more
tragic
than Africa got.
less accident in Africa. So,
yeah.
All right. Well, continuing to talk about General Conference, right? And I think all of our predictions, the entire makeup of it has changed and shifted now that President Nelson has passed away, and it's President Oaks, right? His new tenure. And so, oops, let me move it back one here. There we go. And so I kind of feel like maybe a lot of talks are being rewritten. Maybe some quotes.
Yes, they've got to swap out all those quotes from President
Mm-hmm.
Nelson and make them President Oaks quotes.
Yep, that's exactly what I was thinking, that's what they'd be doing. And I don't know for sure, but I'm even more intrigued now as far as what's happening behind the scenes right now and what we may see this weekend. So one of the big things is, did you guys realize that it's the 30th birthday of the family, A Proclamation to the World? This is a huge deal. This came out in 1995, and it has been used like a sword ever since then. And I just wanted to point out that
I think that Chieko Okazaki was in the Relief Society presidency at the time, wasn't she?
She was, and I'm glad that you pronounced her name correctly because I butchered it on a podcast that I'm putting out on Tuesday. So when I come to a quote by her, I'm just going to let you pronounce her name. But I
Well,
did
I
go
had to study it
over.
because I mispronounced it in another episode earlier.
I
It's
know she's such a
Okazaki.
beloved. I mean, she was literally
Yeah.
a female rock star. And I think
Mhm.
she kind of got Uchtdorfed a little bit. When anybody kind of rises, they can't stand that. The ones that have personality or charisma. So, but I did notice just one day over on the church newsroom, there were these are only some of them, like 15, stories about the proclamation, all kinds of things, anything you've ever wanted to know, and people talking about every aspect of it. So I kind of perused those, looked through them, and thought, okay, I'll dig in a little more tomorrow when I have time. And one story in particular I was really curious to read was titled, "What Led to the Creation of the Family, a Proclamation to the World?"
And I
Right?
scanned that article when I first
Mhm.
saw it because
Yeah.
I wanted to see if they were going to say anything about the gay marriage case that was winning
Yep.
its way up the Court of Appeals in Hawaii, which
Yep.
is why the whole proclamation was written from the first place, was so to give the church standing so they could file amicus curiae briefs in that case. I didn't
Exactly.
see that.
Yeah, no, I think we were all very curious. And again, I skimmed it like that for another podcast that I'm putting out on Tuesday and wanted to go back the next day and look for exactly what you were talking about, RFM. What does the church say led
Yeah.
to the
So,
family proclamation,
so
right?
can I just say before you change this, the huge thing is that this is a complete rewrite of history. This is not what led to the creation of the family. This is a family proclamation. This is what the church wants you to believe led to the
Exactly.
creation of the family proclamation while they're lying to you by not telling you the real reason that led to the creation of the family proclamation. And for some reason, what happened, Rebecca?
For some reason, so the next day I go back, right? And here it is on all the different ways that you can access the article. There's a picture of it. There's another post over here. There's that. Every single one I clicked on, and this is within 24 hours, we still haven't found what we're looking for. It was gone. The article was gone. And that made me extraordinarily curious about what had actually been in it. Because, like I said, I just skimmed it. You skimmed it. Your skimming is probably better than me, RFM, because you've gone to law school. You probably, can speed read better than I can. But I was incredibly curious. So I went over on Ex-Mormon Reddit and
It
I
was
said, oh my
quite a
gosh,
long article.
really long article. And I said, hey, this is gone. And then somebody said, oh, it's still open on a tab on my phone. And I said, screenshots, right? Exclamation point, exclamation
Don't
point,
close the tab.
So I know, I'm telling you, ex-Mormons, we bring the receipts. So this person made a post of this article and it's extremely long. As you can see, there it is. There's the article.
Have you
But
read it closely yet?
I've read a lot of it. There is no mention of Hawaii, but what
No
I
mention of
think
Hawaii, though.
I think the reason that they took it down, and it was written by an intern, right? It was written by an intern. And I think they took it down because, they're promoting this as a revelation. And this definitely has steps and timelines of people meeting and talking and revising. To a faithful member, that might be information they weren't aware of. You know what I mean? The other thing that's interesting here is that they have all these pictures of the women of the church that contributed, right? They have all these pictures of the different Relief Society presidencies and female leaders that they're kind of alluding to had some kind of hand in it. This is not the case at all. The women were preparing for their women's conference. Remember how that used to be the week before regular conference? They had their talks written. They had everything ready to go. They were called into First Presidency's office, President Hinckley, and they're like, here it is. We're going to announce this. Now you go be prayerful about it. So everything in the article that says the women prayerfully considered, that was when they were told to consider 3 days before their conference. And they had to rewrite all of their talks to support this new proclamation.
Yeah.
Now, here's our favorite person who you're
What's her
talking
name?
about.
What's her name, Rebecca?
I can't say it. And I actually choked on the first name. Is it Chieko
Yes.
Okazaki?
Yes.
Okay. Sister
Bravo.
Okazaki. All right. So she said, it says, after the family proclamation to the world was written, the Relief Society presidency was asked to come to a meeting. We did. And they read the proclamation. It was all finished, she said. This is in Dialogue, a Journal of Mormon Thought. The only question was whether they should present it to the priesthood meeting or at the Relief Society meeting. And it didn't matter to me where it was presented. What I wanted to know was, how come I wasn't consulted, right? Boy, she was
Let's
a
say we,
pistol.
though.
Huh?
It says
How-
we.
Yeah, how come we weren't consulted, right? She's a pistol. The apostle, who was the woman's liaison, said, "Isn't it wonderful that he, President Gordon B. Hinckley, made the choice to present it at Relief Society meeting?" Okazaki said, "Well, that was fine, but as I read it, I thought that we could have made a few changes in it."
Mm-hmm.
So I really think that article was pulled just because it inflated the women's role. The role was nothing; it was non-existent, and it
So
also
it did
just
not have this part in it.
no. This is what I'm showing the real story. This is what really happened. Yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
good. Yeah.
Yeah, and I also think it just went through too many steps that you're like, huh, is that how Revelation works? Well, a
And
lot of us
really,
know
how
yes.
ridiculous to think that presenting it at somebody's meeting. And by the way, Rebecca, point of order, it was not, they did not have a conference session. Women did not have a conference session then.
Yeah, it
was a
wasn't.
meeting. It was
Yeah.
not part of conference. It was
Yeah.
not considered part of general conference
You're
at
correct.
the time.
Yeah,
So
and it was every
anyway,
other year. Yeah, you're right. And the men stayed home and made donuts when it was the women's meeting. Yeah.
oh yeah, that's totally what we did. We were out having fun and not making donuts, I can tell you that.
Exactly. No, I'm sure that's true. So yeah, it's a really interesting history. And my curiosity, of course, is conference. What are they going to say about the proclamation? I think they were probably going to say more about it now with the
Yes.
death. I think they'll have to talk more about President Nelson and succession and the new prophet. But I feel like we're going to have so many talks that are going to sing the praises of this document, talk about, how the women had a hand in it. I'd like everybody to kind of look for that and
Yeah.
kind of see what they're saying as opposed to reality. And there are
Some
lots
people
of
were wondering if finally they would get around to canonizing
exactly.
this family proclamation.
Yeah.
What do you think about that, Bill?
Yeah. If they would have
We've
the
been
nerve.
wondering a long time, right? If they would do that the next
Mhm.
conference, the next conference. But it is 30 years. They've
Yep.
had a whole bunch of people talking about it. They have Holland out there, trying to talk about more scriptures coming, which they've been saying all the time. And it doesn't necessarily
Yeah.
mean that they're going to
That's
canonize
an
anything.
interesting point. Yeah, we do have a little video from President Holland just a week
Yeah.
or so ago where he holds up the Book of Mormon and he says, "There's more scripture coming. This is only a piece of it." So, and this is President Oaks's baby. You know what I mean? So I don't know. What do you think, Bill? Is there a chance?
Just
Well-
what we need is more scripture that the Mormons won't read.
Yeah.
On one side, we've got stories that have come out of the church with people like Elder Holland or D. Todd Christofferson not being happy with how the 2015 policy came into effect. And you've had lots of folks working behind the scenes to share the hurt and the pain that policy has caused. And so it seems like a strange thing, knowing all of that, for the family proclamation to be made into scripture. Separate thing, but sort of connected.
Mhm.
I will say this to what you just said, Rebecca. In 1984, I believe it was, maybe earlier, 1981, Elder Oaks was brand new in the Quorum of the 12, brought in as a lawyer, former Supreme Court Justice of Utah. And he created a document for the church that laid out how the church would handle homosexuality going forward. That document is still available. I'll look for it as we move on after the story. But as you said, this is his baby, the family proclamation. He is the lawyer in the top leadership who has had the agenda of helping the church deal with homosexuality. There's no doubts his fingerprints are on everything that went into the family proclamation. This is his moment.
Yeah.
He really does get whatever he wants if he's the prophet of the church. It'll be interesting to see happening this weekend.
It would be a jam-packed conference if they actually tried to balance all of these plates. The 1995 family proclamation, the death of President Nelson, and the massacre in Michigan.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
perfect storm. It
It would
really
be, it would actually be a good conference.
I was going to say, I had kind of said, I'm not going to watch it. I'm only going to watch RFM's recap because, sometimes you need a break. But now I've got my popcorn ready. So,
But my expectation is it will just be as boring as ever. They will let this opportunity pass by them to be interesting.
Yeah, you're probably correct. So we'll have to watch. It'll be interesting and we will see. So, but yes, proclamation, we don't know. Place your bets here, I guess. All right. Let's see. A couple other little stories I was just going to mention. There is a downward swerve in missionaries, or a predicted downward trajectory.
Prediction.
Have you guys heard anything about this? That
No.
fewer and fewer missionaries? I think it was you, Bill, that covered some of the numbers before, that just sort of said it was kind of a post-COVID uptick anyway that led to these bigger numbers. We've talked about the numbers before, but this is interesting. It was in Mormon Land, and it was an article that said called to swerve downward. I thought that was kind of clever. The church's global missionary force soared to nearly 80,000 at the end of last year. And we've talked about how a lot of those are women, right? A lot of those are sister missionaries. But what goes up, Latter-day Saint data scientist Stephen Craney predicts will come down. So I was intrigued by this title because we talk about missionaries a lot, and the church seems to use it kind of as an indicator of the health of the church. You know what I mean? They always put that out there. We have this many missionaries. It's one of the few things where, there is kind of an impressive number compared to other religions. So this was an article called Missionary Numbers Are Peaking and Will Start to Decline. And again, this was covered in Mormon Land. And so he says there's something comfortable and fun about the kind of armchair predictions about the future that are either too vague to be falsifiable or too far in the future for anybody to hold you to account. So he's saying he likes to make this kind of prediction because, it's in the future. But he's predicting that the record. Yes.
It's how Joseph Smith became a prophet.
It is how Joseph Smith became a prophet. The
Either
record-breaking
too vague
number.
to be falsifiable or too far in the future for anybody to hold you to account.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. He's following the prophet's footsteps. The record-breaking number of missionaries we are currently enjoying is going to peak in the next year or two, or maybe possibly it already has, and then it will start a precipitous decline. You can mark my prediction here, is what he's saying, and we'll tell you why, which is kind of interesting. I know. So
that's something, because if the church is continuing to grow as the church claims loudly and repeatedly, then the missionaries would be growing too, or at least they wouldn't be declining precipitously.
By the way,
yeah, Bill.
By the way, the who reports that the church is growing in as good as ever? It's the church.
Mm-hmm.
Who reports the missionary numbers? It's the church. If they're willing to fix one side of the coin, they're willing to fix the other. We can't trust any of this data.
Yeah.
All data coming from those who are dabbling in demographics within Mormonism on the outside, everyone is pointing to the church being at the best plateaued and at worst declining. And the church keeps sending out raving reviews of its growth. It's who reports the missionary numbers. I'm just telling you, maybe you don't trust what you hear.
Yeah, and I think we'll have some of those reports at conference, right? The statistical report. I mean, I know they don't do it the way they used to, but they do mention things.
I think they just tell you to go look, dig it up for yourself. We're not going to tell you anymore.
Yeah, well, I think they mention in talks sometimes. We have a growing missionary force, or yeah, there is the church website where they put it. So, so anyway, according to this data, the reason is not because of a crisis in confidence in the leadership, smartphones, your cousin reading the CES letter, some policy failure in the seminaries and institutes department, or he even says somehow Donald Trump. I'm sure there's plenty of shooting from the hip speculation, but the reason is it's something much more just completely average and ordinary, and we're talking about demographics overall, right?
Is there a reason you didn't pronounce BANAL, Rebecca?
No, because I'm reading from notes that are just like notes off this. I can't see that. You know that.
I didn't know that. It was right there. You said every other word up to it and after it.
And don't even ask me why I have reading glasses on my head and I'm not using them to read my note. I know I have a whole system here. Okay. I'm a novice podcaster. All right. So he goes on to say the engine of the church's proselyting is in its 18 to 20-year-old demographic in the United States, right? That's the age range where these missionaries are going, and they stay out till they're 21 or 1 year, of course, if you're a sports figure. So they come mostly from the Latter-day Saint corridor in particular. In the next couple years, the cohort of 18 to 20-year-olds is going to significantly shrink. And this part blew me away as a result of the steep drop in childbearing that happened in 2008. Do you guys remember what happened in 2008?
Yeah, I was alive then.
Yeah, it was the Great Recession. It was the mortgage crash. It was all of us going, what the hell? Why don't we have jobs anymore? It was a very dark time looking back. I mean, I think I'm still recovering, but apparently that also impacted childbearing. So those kids that would have been born there at that time, that would have been the age of a missionary now, there aren't as many of them and by a large number. So I thought that was very interesting. This is going to be Armageddon for smaller unendowed universities. And I have seen the enrollment is dropping, right? I think Bill covered something about that a while ago, right? For the smaller unendowed universities and maybe the not so small ones. Let's see. But in a sense, it goes higher education in the US, so goes the Latter-day Saint missionary force. So I do wonder if the church is anticipating this. Think about the changes they've made in missionary service. And this is one of my conference predictions, that there may be something like this brought up. Now, I have seen on social media, faithful social media, people have been reporting that they have been hearing in state conferences and things leading up to the big show, the big conference. Leaders have been saying things like, we're going to hear some new information. There's going to be something announced, right? And it might be hard to hear. It might be something that you're going to have to wrestle with a little bit. So I don't know what that means or if it's even true. Could be a change to missionaries, right? So like Bill mentioned, 40-year-old men, older men can now go on missions. I have had faithful podcasters say on their podcasts, what about young couple missionaries, right? What about sending a young couple out? What about
How are
letting
they
somebody
supposed to support themselves?
Yeah, everyone would have to be affluent. They also talked about, are you affluent enough that you can semi-retire at 40? Why don't you go on a mission? So these are going to be affluent people who aren't working every day like me and everybody else. And they're making these suggestions that missionary work may change, like other churches, right? Who do send out couples. So I don't know. We may see some big changes there because of this anticipated downturn. So
Was this a prediction of yours for this conference as well?
it was one of them that they might make some changes to missionary work like that. The other thing is everybody taking note of sports figures that are only serving 1 year. And I also saw on faithful social media influencers saying, why can't missions be more tailored to the person? Exactly, almost word for word what we say here. Why can't a regular person, not an NIL athlete, say, you know what, 1 year works out for me, and then I'm going to go into my jazz cello program, right? I mean, so people are talking about this. So it's a possibility.
I don't think here's why I don't think on that. So on that, okay. I understand getting the elite couture missions for the high and the mighty, right? But the church has to have missionaries. They need the free labor. They're leaning on their old folks to serve multiple missions after they retire. And so, I mean, I just can't see them taking away the length of the mission unless they honestly think that by decreasing the length of the mission, they're going to have enough extra missionaries signing up that's going to take care of the deficit, which was the wrong-headed decision they made back in the 80s when they did the same thing and took it from 2 years to 1.5. Thinking more people, like they need 25% more people to sign up for missions to make up for the difference, whatever that percentage is, and they didn't show up.
Yeah, I don't know. It's different. And then people who read this article commented and said, it's very skewed to the statistics in the United States because birth rates are not falling in other countries, right? So will missionaries come from other areas where this big, decline in birth rate is not going to happen? But it says in Utah, we're hovering around 2.6, 2.7. But after the 2008 decline, we are now slightly below replacement of 2.1. So it is absolutely declining. If I had to make a less confident but more numerically precise estimate, one projection has, for example, the Utah college population declining by 6% through 2023 to 2041. And I'd put my pin if I had to make a precise prediction, but the parameters could possibly change. Also, retention rates fall into all of this. We've talked about the Pew Religious Landscape many times, that just overall, attendance at church adherence is falling. So it is kind of interesting. He says, I could be wrong about our missionary force declining, but it's hard to fight against demographic waves. So I don't think I will be. So if he is correct, I predict we could see some shifts in, trying to make up for this lost demographic. I don't know. Thoughts?
For whatever meaning it has, I just Googled and to find out what percentage of the Mormon missionaries are from the United States and came up with 30%.
Huh.
I thought it would
Well,
be more, but it came up with
well,
30%.
I think that missionaries in other countries are called to countries near their country. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like missionaries aren't necessarily going to move, be coming. I don't know. It's interesting. It'll be interesting to watch. That's all I can say. Any thoughts on that, Bill? Declining missionary numbers. You're kind of our numbers guy.
How about summer break missionaries? How about high school kids going out on their summer breaks to
spring break missionaries?
Spring break. Let's do Easter break and Christmas break missionaries. We'll get
Where
all
the
of
boys are.
We'll get all of our 14 to 17-year-old high school kids out tracting near their homes, knocking on doors, helping the full-time missionaries out. We'll see what happens. I told you guys a long time ago, the number of missionaries serving is the easiest way to see the activity and faithfulness of the church as a trajectory. And if it starts to go down, you can just take it for what it's worth.
You did say that. I remember hearing it.
I did.
Yep. I think I wrote it down in my journal. I have a newscast journal. No, and someone made a comment in the chat, virtual missionaries. And it's true. The church absolutely has figured out social media, and it is going berserk and blowing up, as are other denominations, right? So that could be something too, where you just literally sit at home like you used to sit when you were in high school gaming, only this time you're saying, hey, want to come to church? Want a friend? So
I
that's
don't
an
know.
option
Do you
too.
need that nowadays with the AI? We
Yeah,
used to
you know
have
what?
the missionary discussions memorized in their entirety.
That's true. You never know who you're actually talking to. So anyway, we'll keep an eye, but it will be very interesting. Let's see. I think I had a little bit of temple news to kind of round things out. And of course, Lone Mountain, Nevada. We have been following this since the very beginning. And we are at the point where there's a groundbreaking. A lot of the residents that I'm friends with there, they didn't really know much about it, even though it was happening like 100 feet from their house, right? So they came in and they had a big groundbreaking, even though, like Cody, like Heber, there is still this appeal to the Supreme Court of Nevada. You guys have seen this pattern, right? This is the trajectory. They try to work with the local, they get shut down, they appeal, they take it up to the top. Even I can understand this. So, and this is a huge temple. This is a ginormous, they knocked it down to like 196 feet because of aviation rules, but this is massive.
There's an airport right by there, right? And then
that was
airplanes
Heber.
have to fly
Heber, they
over
did
the
not
top.
know. Heber, they did not knock down. Moroni is going to have red
this
lights.
isn't
on
Heber. This is Las
Yeah.
Vegas. This
is
Lone
Lone
Mountain.
Mountain.
Okay.
I know all the temples are on the same trajectory. The same thing is happening. So here we
And
go
they
with the
all kind of look the same to
groundbreaking.
me too.
Yep, there it is. They said a dedicatory prayer. Look how excited they are. And isn't it amazing? They're just standing in front of this beautiful natural mountain, Lone Mountain. And what does the church do when it sees a beautiful natural landmark, like here in Lone Mountain, or this gorgeous view in Cody, or the
Let's put a temple in front
beautiful
of it.
area? Let's put a freaking temple in front of it. And you can see the beautiful mountain in the background of those standing with golden shovels. And then upper right, it's going to have a temple smack down in the dab in the middle. There it is. You just got to put your fingerprint wherever it is. Anyway, during the ceremony, it was said, guide the hands that will shape stone, wood, glass, and steel, that the beauty and craftsmanship of this temple may reflect the divine truths that will be taught within its walls. So that's very poetic. And I don't know if you remember, but I have a recording from the church lawyers trying to talk to LDS leadership there in Lone Mountain and, try to explain what's going on. And maybe that was Fairview. Anyway, one of these recordings said that
Fairview.
Jesus actually lives on the second floor. So that's why they have to be that tall. Jesus actually physically inhabits the second floor.
That's why there's a full suite there.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and I think that was Fairview. But yeah, that is why the temple is so big and tall. And I had to put this other picture, very early days, 2 years ago. The
Hey,
residents.
Rebecca,
Yes.
Bill, did you have something you wanted to say?
Just a really quick note. Notice there's no apostle or first presidency member there. I'm so used to at the groundbreakings of temples seeing at least one apostle, and what you end up with is Michael Dunn, who's a member of the 70. He is the church's representative there, but no apostles breaking ground. So anyway,
wow.
I think in the contested areas, of which this is one, right? Where there's been a lot of resident engagement, Heber, Cody, all those, they're not going to send an apostle into that.
No,
They're
They
not
should.
gonna
They
do
should
it.
just put targets on their backs.
Yeah,
That way everybody
exactly.
knows who the apostle is.
Yeah.
By the way, Rebecca, sorry to interrupt you. It's just
Nope.
sometimes I get this. I look up and I see Bill has this beamish look about him, and I can just see he's got something great he wants to share.
Exactly. And I can't see anything. So I'm glad that you're keeping me on track. We should have a little hand raising, signal here. But the little picture at the bottom, very early on. And it's funny how we started, covering all this, all the temples kind of all together, same trajectory, but they floated a giant ball up in the sky at the height of the temple to say, hey, everybody, residents, this is where it's going to be. Let's mobilize and let's do something. So as I said, they are still the residents, they lost in the district court. And remember, RFM, how I reported on the city then turned around and sued the residents for the fees of this case, right? They said this was frivolous. You guys have to pay, right? And that's kind of what has happened. Here's some more pictures from the groundbreaking. So it is continuing up. They have appealed to the to the Supreme Court of Nevada. I don't know if they've accepted it yet, but the residents looks like they are going to have to pay, according to the judge. They are going to have to pay for some of those legal costs for even daring to sue the city over this issue. So now
they've got to pay the city the legal costs that the city expended, presumably using the taxpayer dollars that these very people were taxed.
Exactly. Yep. So that's something that's a little disappointing.
It's like double dipping.
It's double dipping. Yep. And so currently the case is now before the Nevada Supreme Court following the petition by the Nevada Rural Preservation Alliance. That is the citizens group. While the case was pending, a groundbreaking ceremony was held. So now in Heber, there was an injunction and they made them stop building, right? They had already started digging. There was water. They made them stop. That's not happening here. They can go ahead and build. And in Cody, that didn't happen either. While there was still legal proceedings, they were able to build. So the church is just trucking on, moving on. 200 temples announced by President Nelson, by the way, 228 completed. Okay. So that means to finish at the same pace, over 30 years for the rest of them. Do you think they will announce the temples that he was going to announce at conference? Or do you think they'll wipe the slate and start over with Oaks's announcements?
I think they might just take a break for about a decade and go, we've got enough temples for now.
Yeah, except for there's that thing that we reported on that said they want a temple within an hour of every single member of the church. And I hear there's somebody up at that Antarctica station. So they've got to do it. And I do have a little insider information that they are trying to tweak the way that they build temples. The process is very laborious. It's all concentrated with one, power structure. They're trying to kind of change it, maybe amp it up to accommodate all these temples. So maybe 10 a year. And I've also made the prediction before that I feel like they're going to dumb down, kind of maybe make some of the meeting house level decor and architecture, especially
How can
for
they dumb
other
it down?
meeting house level
We
decor.
have wall-to-wall carpeting.
Yeah.
It's indoor, outdoor. It's literally wall-to-wall. It goes halfway up the cinder block wall.
Yep, that's it. That's what I'm saying. I think instead of these opulent temples, which may not be the greatest look in some of these other countries, I think there's going to be sort of a temple light, kind of a meeting house level, instead of those extraordinarily ornate, facade and everything, just kind of a little more under the radar. So we'll see. That's one of my predictions. But
Okay, well, I don't know, because that would actually require Elder Oaks to have humility. I know he likes to say he has it a lot, but that would actually require humility to announce no temples for the rest of his presidency.
Yeah. And it would make him look
President Nelson was announcing them all over the place.
Exactly. And it would make him look like he had not inherited the lighted pen, right? How come the Lord gave
they
President
accidentally
Nelson
buried it
200
with Elder
temples?
Nelson.
Exactly. That's it. So I don't know, but we'll see. Temples, I'm telling you, all these things are shaken up at conference because of President Nelson's death. One other quick little one, Jacksonville, Florida approves $27 million temple that's going to be built. And this has just kind of been sailing through the process in the city there. I was kind of waiting for somebody to maybe contact me and say, hey, do you know what's going on? Nobody did. But now that it's passed, right, the conditional use permit is there. Now the residents are like, hey, what about traffic? Has anyone done a traffic study? Yeah, that's too late. You need to have thought of that a long time ago, the playbook. So there was a little concern about traffic, and no traffic study was done because no residents were complaining. So we'll keep an eye on that. But there is.
Am I the only one who really thinks these look all the same?
They do.
I mean, they look different in the way that different kind of buildings made out of the same Lego
Yep.
look the same.
Yeah.
They're all kind of a piece.
Yep. Well, they're prefab. They're preformed. The smaller ones, I mean, they're
And I'm
all.
sure that accounts for a lot of it.
Yeah, we saw that in Cody when they had loaded in the pieces of the temple before they even announced it to the citizens in Cody, right? And just kind of slap them up and put them together. They do pride themselves. I've talked to different designers and architects of putting something that represents the area, something natural. Like they'll say, oh, there's this flower in Jacksonville. We're going to weave that into the carpet, right? I did hear a funny story about a temple in South America from one of the architects where the church wanted this beautiful flower to be kind of put in some of the architectural details. And once they put it in, it was sort of a hanging flower with like two little balls of a flower and then sort of a hanging part to the flower. Anyway, it looked like male anatomy and they had to take it down because it just didn't look quite right. So there
That's
are
right. You
these
got my
amazing-
attention at male anatomy.
I know. I did the visual too, didn't I? So yeah. So anyway,
Like
that was
doing
not.
a
I mean,
Hawaiian dance.
don't even get me started on the chandeliers. I mean, come on. Can
Really?
anything be
I
more
got to go
phallic
back to
than
the
that?
temple. But look at this. It's like the Mormons hate color. They have no color in their.
Yep.
They don't like color. Everything's
No.
white. And I think the
You're right.
reason that we know why everything is white on these temples now is so that they'll reflect light.
Yep, that's exactly the uplighting, the upwash, as they call it, which they, assure people this will never spill out over toward your house. Yeah, but it will blind you against everything else. And I have an example of this, I think, on my last slide. Oh, here it is. Yeah, now it's controversial. Now the residents there in Jacksonville are, trying to see what's going on. We'll keep you reported on that. This is so interesting. I'm literally putting this together and I'm overhearing a conversation about the Linden Temple. I heard these people, it was in a restaurant, say something about the Linden Temple. They had no idea I was sitting behind them. And I'm kind of got my Jamie Summers sonic ear, right?
Yeah.
Because first they said, I don't know what's going on with Linden. I'm like, what?
Mhm.
Right? Uh-oh, bad luck that you're sitting by me because now everybody's going to know what's going on with Linden. So the Linden Temple has really been completed. And I thought this too, according to, these people that I eavesdropped on. And you can see here the furniture moved in like in the summer. Furniture is usually the last thing to go on. It's done. Right. It is already lit. Look at this picture down here. This is the neighborhood. It is lit every night. It's a massive temple. If you look over here on the left, you can see a teeny tiny little 4-story house. Look how small that is compared to the temple.
It's
and
crazy
lit.
because that temple, I mean, it looks like a bounce house,
Yes.
except it's a temple.
Except
Obviously, it's much bigger, but it looks kind of silly.
This little house is 4 stories. These are big Utah homes. And I cannot express to you how big this is. If anyone in the chat has driven past Linden, please back me up. This is you just can't even believe it. And there it is lit up. It's not even open yet. And the people that were talking today said, yeah, we don't know what's going on. The open house is not scheduled till well into next year, but it's completed and it's lit every night. Yes, lit every night.
The point of the temples is to light them up.
I guess, but nothing inside. And then they said something interesting because, again, like I said, sonic ear, right? So it's finished. It's lit every night. No open house date until next year. And then they said this. There's another temple probably about 12 miles away, the Mount Timpanogos Temple. That's the one that I could always see out of my window of my house where I was raising my kids, always in every window. So they said that 1,000 temple workers will be moving from the Mount Timpanogos Temple District to support Linden. So that tells me that they're coming from all over to Mount Timpanogos. And the people I was listening to said, where are we going to get 1,000 temple workers to support our Mount Timpanogos temple? So again, can you believe that number? 1,000. This is what we're talking about. The number of people, the busy work that it takes to man a temple. I just couldn't believe it. Anyway, that's what I overheard about Linden. If anyone else knows anything else about why it's lit every night, seems to be fully completed, but will not be used for like another 6 months, please let me know.
How many?
Apparently, the need is not pressing.
How many of those 1,000 temple workers can be replaced with AI?
Well,
that guy right there.
Can AI do this? Can it do
What?
that? Can it do this? Shh. And can it do this? You've been sitting in the celestial room for 30 seconds. There's another group that needs to come through. If it can do those 3 things, a lot could be replaced.
I think pretty much, yeah, it can.
Yep, I think so too. So I think that's it for me. Those are my little stories at the end there.
Well, wonderful. Is that all the stories from both of you? I know mine are done.
I think so. Yeah.
Well, then on the radar, tomorrow's Mormonish, and I understand you've got a really, really great episode. You told me about it before. I'll let you describe it for our audience.
Yep, I do have a fantastic episode, and this has to do with the proclamation, to the family proclamation. And RFM kind of mentioned Hawaii, some of its origins. A lot of people understand come from a legal brief needed, same-sex marriage fight in Hawaii. But it goes back farther than that. Has anyone ever heard of the Family Manifesto? Have you heard of this, Bill? Okay. Do you know who this gentleman is here on my slide? This is Moral Majority Leader Jerry Falwell, right? Head of the
There's
Christian
no D, I
right.
think, but yeah,
What?
Jerry Falwell.
Didn't I say Jerry Falwell?
I was just saying I don't think there's a D, but it's no big
Oh,
deal.
is it Falwell? Jerry
sure.
Falwell. Yeah.
I can look it up.
Anyway, and it wasn't even before my time. I probably should have known that. Anyway, so he is the head of the Christian right. And back in 1988, they needed a document to use in the courts to further their, religious point of view and to fight against same-sex marriage. So they came up with this amazing document called the Family Manifesto. And it goes point by point. We proclaim, we declare. It has all kinds of points about the family, what a family should be, what a family shouldn't be, how God is a part of the family. And it goes on for several pages. This is 1988. And this document was passed out at the Republican convention that year. This document was everywhere in the Christian right, Republican realm. And we're going to talk about this on the episode. Flash forward 7 years. And what do we have? Oh, look, it's not the Family Manifesto. It's the Family Proclamation. If you guys want to see how close these two documents are, in some cases, word for word, tune into Mormonish at 6 p.m. Mountain Time tomorrow night. And I think this is going to blow your mind. Somebody did have a revelation about a family proclamation or manifesto, but I think it might have been Jerry Falwell. Anyway, that's tomorrow night, Mormonish Podcast Tuesday at 6 p.m.
I've got to see this because this is going to blow my mind. Honestly, if not only were the leaders of the Mormon church not inspired when they came up with this, it was purely a legal document that was created for a legal purpose, or a quasi-religious document created for a legal purpose. If it turns out that they didn't even do their own document, their own proclamation, but are ripping off somebody else who happens to also be a very prominent fundamentalist evangelical Christian, then shame on them. Shame on you, President Oaks. Oh my
That's
word,
right.
if that's true.
And I wanted to get this out right before conference so that everybody could watch this, and then they could watch them extolling the virtues of the revelation of the Family Proclamation. And then maybe if you watch this and you're at family dinner, you could just bring up, have you ever heard of the Family Manifesto? Yeah, it's a very interesting scenario.
Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to seeing that tomorrow at 6 p.m. Mountain Time, Rebecca.
6 p.m. Mountain Time, that's right.
Bill?
All right. So first, I would just want to note this. We have this episode back up. We did an episode, you and I, RFM. You had a guest on. He regretted a few things that he had said, so we made some edits. It is back up and running. Anything else you want to say about that? Otherwise, I'll move on from
Not
that.
publicly. I'll talk to you about it privately afterward.
Okay, I
There's
love
a possibility we'll have to take it down again. I don't know, but
Okay.
we'll see. I want to hear from the audience. Actually, maybe we'll talk about it Friday night, though. That's an awful far time out in the future. But want to get the audience's perspective on this, because I think we've really been over backwards and everything. And we're trying to, keep this out in front of the audience. It was a very popular interview, 8,000 by the next morning. So we'll see. We'll see. Okay. And, but it's up now. So if you're going to listen to this thing and it's really good, you better listen to it now. That's
And then
all I'm
yes. And then the other thing we've got is Wednesday, Mormonism Live. We'll go into detail on the Reed Smoot hearing. This is something that's been covered in other places. I've seen the transcript of the Q&A of the government versus Joseph F. Smith. We'll just give sort of an overview. We'll let you know what questions were asked of him, what his answers were. We'll put some original documents and stuff up on the screen like we always do. And I think folks will walk away from this clearly understanding what the Reed Smoot hearing was all about and what happened there that was noteworthy in Mormon history. So there's that as well. Anything else on your end, RFM, for what you've
Yeah,
got?
are you kidding me? On top of the fact that General Conference is coming up, and I have committed myself once again to this position, God help me, of listening to every session and then immediately after it's over, going live and podcasting about what was said and done and all the insights and wisdom that were not present.
You are
I'm
a
trying to
saint
make
for
what?
doing that. You're a
What?
saint for doing that. I can't tell you how many people say to me, "Oh, I can't watch, but I will watch RFM." Some say I'll watch Nemo, but I will watch RFM, they say.
I am a
So
saint.
you're
I am a
amazing.
saint, and
Until
I'm
you
working on
drop
getting
dead doing it.
canonized
Yeah, hang
by
in there.
this action.
Seriously.
Thank you. But it's all of them. I'm going to report on it. So if you live in Utah, then it starts at 10 to 12, I think, doesn't it? My time is 1 hour off, but it's 10 to 12 in Utah. Boom, noon, I'm going live. And hopefully, no, half an hour, but no more than an hour, please. Please. And then wait till the next one go on, which is 2 to 4 right in Utah. 4 o'clock, boom, I'm live. Even before the choirs cease singing. And then I cover the second session and then the evening session, which 6 to 8, but it's never gone to 8 in the last number of years now, ever since the women goofed everything up, right? No, it was this is one of the things that happened with President Nelson, I think, because of course, back in 95, it was the women's meeting a week before conference. Then they made the women's meeting on the Saturday of conference on alternate 6 months conferences, right? The semi-annual, I think they got, and on the annual it was priesthood, which is what it had been forever. Before that, the Saturday night was the priesthood session just for the men. Then they gave it to the women, and then it's like somebody decided, well, geez, if they gave it to the women, then what's the point? So it kind of fluctuated back and forth, and then they said, we're just screw it. We're going to make it a regular session like every other session of General Conference. And after they made that decision, nobody cares about it anymore.
Yep.
And they'll go an hour, maybe an hour and 15 minutes, and they say, we're out of here. We're blowing this popsicle stand. So they're not even committed to the Saturday evening session. The only reason I'm saying that is because I'm not going to wait till 8 o'clock to go live if they stop early, and they probably will. I'm going to go live when they stop early. So whenever that happens, I will have been doing it all day by that point. I'm not going to wait until 8 o'clock if they're not hanging around to start. And then same thing on Sunday morning with the morning and the afternoon sessions. So I'll be doing 5 sessions this weekend. And on top of that, I hope to interview Julie Hanks this Thursday morning and have a Radio Free Mormon up Thursday evening, just in case you can't get enough of me. Julie Hanks will certainly be worth it listening to. But talking with her, apparently she's left the church. I didn't know about it until I saw Jacob Hansen practically ejaculating all over himself. He was so thrilled about it. No, really, we'll play a little bit of that. It's amazing.
Yeah, no, I know.
And so I'm sure he's very happy since he was leading the charge to get her excommunicated. And apparently she left the church of her own volition. We'll find out why, what's up with that, and what's next for Julie Hanks. So that'll be Radio Free Mormon. It'll be a busy week.
Having left religion, I still look at you doing General Conference every 6 months, and I think of you as a sacrificial lamb. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, it can't be overstated. Honestly, we worry about your well-being on that
Well,
weekend.
you should, because
Seriously,
it gets
it's
really tough.
grueling. Yeah, it's
It gets tough.
mentally, physically, emotionally taxing to do that.
Not
And
only
then
do I have to sit through the damn thing, I have to
regurgitate.
try and make something meaningful out of it.
That's it. Yep.
Oh my gosh, it like exhausts all my creative abilities. But
Well, this one
anyway,
may be
it's a great
different. This
weekend,
one may be different.
and we'll have a lot of fun together. Okay, that's the main thing. We'll have fun together. Thank you, Aaron. Bless me too. God bless us, everyone. And if you'll listen to me instead of Nemo, I'll do it in a freaking English accent. Okay. So everybody, thanks for joining me. Rebecca, Bill, thanks for being here on the newscast. Great show tonight. Everybody, please join us next Monday, 6 o'clock p.m. for the next edition of the Mormon Newscast. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
That's a wrap for this week's edition of the Mormon Newscast. We appreciate you tuning in and sharing this time with us. Keep the conversation going and stay informed on all things Mormonism. Until next week, wishing you peace and joy. See you next Monday at 6 p.m. on the Mormon Newscast.